Okay, a premise.
Not a single disaster in the history of the world has been natural.
So that is Dr. Sam Montano, a professor and disasterologist, who I was lucky enough to go to high school with. So when seeing people in person was still a thing, we took a little bit of time to chat about disasters.
The problem with using the term natural disaster is really rooted in a confusion between two terms, hazard and disaster. A hazard can be natural, a disaster cannot. An earthquake itself is a hazard, but the actual act of buildings falling down, people being trapped, the need for search and rescue and opening shelters, that is what makes the event a disaster.
This kind of just sounds like a semantics argument, but I promise, it really does matter. How we define these kinds of events dictates how we think about, prepare for, and respond to them. Natural implies that there's nothing to be done, that it's just nature. But that's just not true. There are entire fields of research, government agencies, community groups dedicated to preparing for, responding to, and recovering from these environmental hazards.
Going back about 50 years, disaster researchers started questioning if this term natural disaster was really reflective of what was causing disasters. Disaster scholars like Dr. Susan Cutter, Dr. Ben Weisner, Dr. Dennis Maletti explored what it is that actually causes a disaster.
And a big part of that is just how much did people, often people in the government, screw up? Helpfully, there's a kind of scale. So all the big bads that can happen to us theoretically can fall into one of these categories. Something on the smaller side of the scale, like a water main breaking and flooding your and your neighbor's basement, really sucks. But even though that can feel catastrophic at an individual level, it does not require a presidential disaster declaration and FEMA knocking on your door like large disasters and catastrophes would. And frustratingly, we know this. You don't have to be a disasterologist to recognize that a superstorm needs a different response than a car accident. But misdiagnosing, calling a local emergency a disaster, or inversely, not recognizing the oncoming catastrophe in a weather event happens all the time. Take Hurricane Maria, for example.
The winds are ferocious right now, gusting above 120 miles per hour.
In September 2017, when Hurricane Maria came barreling down on Puerto Rico, the island was already dealing with a decades-long economic crisis, the aftermath of extractive shenanigans from mainland-based corporations, and old and too costly to maintain energy infrastructure. Ultimately, more than 3,000 deaths can be attributed to the storm, both from the hurricane itself, but also because many in Puerto Rico were without power or access to medical care for months.
Just about everything was working against Puerto Rico before Hurricane Maria made landfall. Puerto Rico had high levels of social, physical, and economic vulnerability before the storm ever even happened. Then they were hit by a major hurricane. Puerto Rico suffered near complete devastation of infrastructure and lifelines. On top of that, the U.S. emergency management system, which is supposed to be there for these exact types of situations, was already strained after having responded to a major disaster in Texas, Hurricane Harvey, and Hurricane Irma in Florida just weeks earlier.
As a result, Puerto Rico got less aid from the federal government than both Texas and Florida. But also, they got less donated money as well. According to Vice, the American Red Cross received $350 million for rebuilding efforts in Houston, compared to just $9 million in Puerto Rico. This is probably due to a lot of reasons, but a big one worth pointing out is that the national media wasn't on the ground reporting in Puerto Rico when the storm hit. Didn't expand resources to get island-based journalists on national TV, and by the time they flew in a few journalists, the news cycle had moved on. But the news media only shares some of the blame here. After all, I don't think news stories driving donations should be how we respond to the third costliest cyclone on record.
At the heart of this failed response was the fact that Maria wasn't just a regular disaster. It was catastrophic in nature, and the U.S. emergency management system was showing up with our disaster plans at best, not our catastrophe plans.
It's these fundamental failings that begin long before the storm hits or the pandemic starts, when communities are left vulnerable to well-understood risks and hazards that make all disasters not natural. And by calling these disasters natural, we let the people at fault off the hook. Scientists have been warning of a global pandemic of this scale for decades. The tools to protect us from deadly heat waves are readily available, and the problems with the US energy grid and its vulnerability to storms are well known. Especially now, as we get even better at forecasting and warning before a hazard happens, when people die or lose their homes or lose their livelihoods, that is because someone somewhere decided it wasn't worth protecting them. Okay, and I'm gonna go a little bit off brand here because normally this channel is all about climate change, but since I've got Sam here, there's one thing we've got to clear up.
In the past few years, I've started to hear the term climate disaster used by the public and in media. In the same way that the term natural disaster isn't reflective of what causes disasters, neither is the term climate disaster. There is never one cause to a disaster. By its very definition, disasters are about an interaction between a hazard and us. There is a lot encompassed within that us part of the definition. Everything from our physical, social, economic vulnerability to our politics, our policies, and the capacity of our emergency management system to respond.
Hurricane Harvey, which hit Texas and Louisiana in August 2017, is a great example. We know Harvey was likely worse because of climate change. I made a video about it, actually. The warmer temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico supercharged the storm, letting it suck up huge amounts of water.
The only thing that we need to do to stop disasters. That's why it's important to make sure we're thinking about the emergency management system and what reforms need to be made to that system to better prepare ourselves for disasters. I like to say that if we are the cause of disaster, it means we are also the solution to disaster. It is in understanding the human factors that manufacture risk and create disaster that can lead us to advocacy and policy change to actually prevent these disasters from happening in the first place and save lives.
Dropping the natural or climate when we talk about disasters can change our perceptions, letting us better understand the human factors that create disaster risk, which lead directly to advocacy and policy change, and hopefully prevent disasters from happening in the first place. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them downstairs. And while you're down there, you can check out the description where you can find links to all of Sam's social medias and her website. And if you want to hear more from her, she's got a book coming out in August, so hit that pre-order link to order it right now.